Well, welcome to the 700 Club. A gun, a knife, and pepper spray. These weapons and more were found on the man arrested outside Justice Brett Kavanaugh's home yesterday. He was angry about the leaked Supreme Court draft overturning Roe v. Wade. He was also angry about the shootings in Uvalde. He's been charged with attempted murder of a Supreme Court justice.
Violence against conservative justices and pro-life groups is escalating. So are heightened security measures. Heather Sells reports on a crisis that's expected to get much worse if Roe is actually overturned.
U.S. Marshals patrolled outside the home of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh on Wednesday after arresting and charging a California man with attempted murder. He allegedly said he was upset about the leaked Supreme Court opinion on abortion and the shooting in Uvalde.
We will not go back.
Since the leaked opinion, protesters have gathered regularly outside the homes of Kavanaugh and other conservative justices. On Tuesday, Homeland Security warned that the High Court's abortion case, along with immigration and the midterm elections, could trigger extremist violence. The president has condemned any threats, violence, or vandalism against the justices, but he has stayed silent on the hate crimes against the pro-life groups. Many remember the threat Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer made to Kavanaugh at a rally 2 years ago.
You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
The justices aren't the only ones feeling the heat right now. Abortion terrorists have also targeted pro-life organizations across the country.
The latest target, a pro-life crisis pregnancy center in Buffalo, New York. It was firebombed in the middle of the night.
The building itself sustained heavy damage.
Reverend Jim Harden leads the center and says it will take months to repair.
It is unusable at present. At least 25% fire damage and 100% smoke damage throughout.
With signature graffiti on the side of his building, Harden suspects the abortion terrorist group Jane's Revenge. They could also be responsible for fire bombings at 2 other pro-life groups in Wisconsin and Oregon. In addition, a dozen or so crisis pregnancy centers are reporting vandalism and threatening messages. Sue Liebel leads pro-life strategy at the state level and says she expects the intimidation and the violence to continue.
When someone feels like they've lost something, they're more angry, they're more intense about that.
Liebel predicts that post-Roe, there will be heavy picketing and riots near state houses debating abortion. In this challenging climate, pro-life groups like Students for Life of America are hiring security guards and teaching volunteers at rallies how to stay safe.
A lot of times we instruct students just to remain silent, not to engage. If you are engaging, engage in a dialogue, in a one-on-one conversation, not shouting.
For now, Compass Care is serving women in an alternate location, and morale, he says, is high.
The church in particular in New York has rallied. There's been an outpouring of support. People wanting to volunteer, people wanting to give.
Most Supreme Court analysts expect a decision later this month or even in early July. For pro-life organizations, that means heightened security and vigilance as the country watches and waits. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Well, this is horrific, and I really just don't understand the motivation behind this. These are crisis pregnancy centers. These are centers designed to help women give birth to children. If you're saying you're for women's rights, why in the world would you target an organization, a series of organizations? All they want to do is help women. It makes no sense at all. But in our current political climate, the polarization, you have the Senate majority leader inciting people to go after the Supreme Court. It's the heightened polarization, and in that, people are incited to violence. We have to have calls from the highest leaders. The president has to step up here and say, this is not allowed in America. This is, by very definition, a hate crime. Please let's have leadership here and say, no, if you disagree with what the Supreme Court is doing, that's fine. You have plenty of opportunity at the ballot box to have your voice heard. You don't have to carry weapons to Supreme Court justices' homes. In other news, a recall election in California is making waves nationwide. Wendy Griffith has that story from the CBN newsroom. Wendy?
Gordon, voters in San Francisco recalled a progressive district attorney after the crime rate spiked under his controversial policies. It's seen as a warning to like-minded prosecutors and politicians that Americans are fed up with the explosion of lawlessness in their cities. Dale Hurd reports.
One of America's most liberal cities sent a huge message when it booted District Attorney Chesa Boudin. Boudin, the son of convicted Weather Underground terrorist, was elected in 2019 on a clear mandate to reform the criminal justice system, finding alternatives to incarceration, ending cash bail, and holding police accountable. What San Francisco residents got in return was a city so overrun with crime, tourists were warned to avoid the city for their own safety. Under Boudin, burglaries were up 40%, homicides up 37%. A poll showed 40% of city residents plan to leave. Even the city's Democratic mayor got behind the recall effort, which featured ads like this one.
My brother Ed French was murdered on Twin Peaks one morning when he was taking photos of the city he loved. The previous DA, Gascon, was ready to prosecute the killers. But when Chesa Boudin was elected, he fired the prosecutors.
Concern about crime is at its highest level since 2016, and Americans are taking that concern into the polling booth. At least 5 other progressive candidates for district attorney have lost in the past month to opponents pledging to be tough on crime. The next progressive DA who could soon be out is LA County's George Gascon, if opponents collect enough signatures. Former U.S. Attorney Brett Tolman is fighting to reform the criminal justice system, but says what was happening in San Francisco was not reform.
It's outrageous, Dale, to see some of these prosecutors who are telling people that this is criminal justice reform when what it actually is a refusal to follow the law. You never compromise public safety. You also never forget there are real victims of real crimes.
And the backlash against progressive prosecutors is likely not over. Democratic strategist Jim Kessler tweeted this warning: if national Democrats don't wake up to what happened to progressives in New York, Minnesota, and San Francisco this cycle, prepare yourselves for permanent minority status. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thanks, Dale. Now to medical news and a groundbreaking advance in cancer treatment. A small drug trial results in 100% of subjects seeing their tumors disappear. The experimental study involved patients with early-stage rectal cancer. They received 9 intravenous doses of the drug dostarlimab. After 6 months, all 14 patients who completed the trial were tumor-free. The study, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, is hailed as a breakthrough that could lead to treatments of other cancers. Well, doctors and patients alike are singing the praises of cancer treatment that uses the patient's own immune cells to fight the disease. Medical reporter Lori Johnson introduces us to a man who's been in remission for 11 years.
75-year-old Doug Olson has good reason to smile.
I feel great.
11 years ago, doctors told him the treatments they'd been trying for his potentially deadly blood cancer, chronic lymphocytic leukemia, failed.
Terrified is probably the best word to describe it.
Feeling he had nothing to lose, Doug agreed to an experimental treatment developed at the University of Pennsylvania called CAR T therapy. It uses the patient's own immune system, specifically the T cells.
Your blood comes out of one arm, goes into a machine that takes out your white cells, and then the rest of your blood goes back in the other arm.
Scientists take the cells they removed and add receptors that allow them to bind to the invading cancer cells and kill them. These modified T cells are multiplied in the lab and then infused into the patient.
We use my own white cells to kill the cancer cells, but it was brand new. Never done it before in humans. I'm sort of an eternal optimist. I figured, what the heck, worked in mice, maybe it'll work in me.
Did it ever? Just 5 weeks after receiving the treatment, Doug's doctor gave him amazing news.
And he said, Doug, we can't find a single cancer cell in your body.
Doug's success paved the way for thousands to be treated with CAR-T therapy. Now, more than a decade later, he's still cancer-free, showing drug companies and other scientists that continued research could pay dividends.
We feel pretty good about using the word cure now.
Basically, that's a game changer.
So far, the FDA has only approved these therapies to treat blood cancers like lymphomas and leukemias, as well as multiple myeloma. It's usually done at academic medical centers like Duke after other treatments failed.
Their outcome is about 45% for 5 years now. These are the latest studies that showing that the duration of response is extending and actually is not coming down. So I think eventually this will be a cure.
While CAR-T therapy has proven successful for certain types of blood cancers, it has not shown to be effective against other more common cancers, but that could change. Cancer researchers are currently conducting trials to treat some of the deadliest forms of the disease, including pancreatic and lung cancers, as well as brain tumors.
This is only the start. CAR-T will expand more and more to different indications, including more leukemias, including actually other types of cancer in the solid tumor.
So while cancer is America's second leading cause of death behind heart disease, cancer deaths have actually fallen by more than 30% since 1991. Experts say the decreased death rate is due to prevention, such as not smoking, screenings like mammograms, and treatments such as CAR-T therapy. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Thanks, Lori. Gordon, great to see all these medical breakthroughs.
It's phenomenal to see, and not just a treatment for cancer, a cure. That is groundbreaking, and these are wonderful developments, whether it was that study. Here, all 10 patients, the New England Journal of Medicine published the paper because it had never happened before in a clinical trial. Every single patient tumor-free at the end of the test. And now modifying our T cells to go after cancer cells. These are wonderful developments, a wonderful thing, not just for anyone with cancer, but for everyone born in the future to have a future where you can be free from the fear of ever getting cancer. What a wonderful thing to happen.